Okay, if you folks will take your seats, it's time for the Regulated Interest Committee to come to order. I don't know exactly who set this up, but we all have little cups up here with some liquid in it. I guess the toast for something. It's water. No alcohol beverages are allowed. Is that who put this up here? Okay, toast everybody. Okay. All right. First on the agenda, we've got House Bill 849. The author is Representative Amos Amerson. He's going to present the caption of the bill, what it is, and it's going to go immediately to subcommittee under Representative Alan Powell. So, Amerson, Mr. Representative Amerson, which one is it?
I hope. House Bill 849 is a retread of last year. It is in Code Section 3-4-41, and what it does is allows the governing authority of the municipality or the county to call for a referendum, if they so desire, to have package stores. The subparagraph A would read as follows: upon the approval of a proper resolution or ordinance of any governing authority of a municipality or county desiring to permit or prohibit the manufacture, sale, a distribution of distilled spirits in the political subdivision, or upon, and here is the thing, if it is a constituent initiated bill, it would require at least 35% of the registered or qualified voters. And Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Okay. This bill then will be assigned to the Alcohol Tobacco Subcommittee. Chairman Powell will handle the bill and come back expeditiously with a report for the full committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I don't have any special order out there. We'll start with House Bill 514 by Representative Rusty Kidd. I don't know where you got to be on camera, so I think you got to get. All right. Can you?
Everybody? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 514 is a very simple bill. Is that more and more entrepreneurs are coming to the state now and want to open up distilleries and so forth in Georgia. And what this does would permit the distillery to have a tasting room and serve 1/2 ounce tasting of the product. And what you have before you is a 1/2 ounce. And this is what's being made in Milledgeville right now, is this legal moonshine. And this is a 1/2 ounce. What was in y'all cups was a 1/2 ounce. Moonshine, however, what you had before you was a 1/2 ounce of water. Barely enough to brush your teeth in. And so forth. Can't even fill a good cavity with a 1/2 ounce of water. But that's how much a 1/2 ounce is, and that's how much you'll be served in a tasting room. And that's all it does, Mr. Chairman, is permit the distillery to have a tasting room and serve a 1/2 ounce of taste. The Revenue Department, I understand, has no problem with it. GMA, I understand, would like to change it a little bit to say that the city would approve the tasting room. I don't really have a problem of changing it, but I think the distillery has to go through all the hoops and whistles of getting a business license, and also the hoops yearly with the revenue department, but the will of the committee. I have some people here who are the manufacturers in Baldwin County of what will soon be a very lucrative tourist tourist location from Milledgeville and Baldwin County. The distilled spirits is being aged right now in the oak barrels and so forth to get the right taste. Moonshine doesn't have to be aged, so it's available right now. While they aren't giving anything to anybody, if anybody would like a bottle of our legal moonshine, it's got all the stamps and everything, let me know, and there's some over there that I'll be more than glad to give you on your way out. But like I said, this is a half ounce.
Any questions from the committee? No questions? Oh, we got one. Representative James.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Representative, you know, you and I talked about this off the floor,
Yes,
and you promised me that you would add into this bill, this piece of legislation here, a tasting room in the Capitol. Did you add that to it?
I remember back when there
It's
was
bad,
some
that
tasting
boy.
going on, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Kidd. You mentioned that the Georgia Municipal Association might offer something. Are they going to bring language today? I mean, is it their wish to test? Okay, they're going to do that later. In your conversations, I understand this affects a few places in place now. If this were to go into code, basically moving forward, if a distillery was approved in a city, county, or otherwise, this language would go along with it.
Oh, yes,
correct?
sir. Anything's opened up next month.
So I would just, I guess I would offer this, as, you know, in the form of a question or suggestion to GMA. I think you may have an issue of another city application of those 4 that exist now. That may or may not be something the committee wants to address, but going forward, if this is law, there shouldn't, I don't believe there needs to be a second application process. I mean, if you approve a distillery, it would come with a tasting room if this should become law. Would that be your intent?
I would hope so, yes, sir.
I'd hope we'd get to that, because that would just be part of the whole picture for which the county would look, or the city would look at it.
I don't know how the revenue department feels about if the revenue department feels there's a need for the city to okay the tasting room and not leave it to the revenue department. You know, we'll go whichever way the revenue department wishes it to be. We've got all the stamps and everything now, but I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Do we have someone to speak on the bill? Where's our sign-up sheet? Okay. Recognize GMA to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Marcy Rubinson from the Georgia Municipal Association. Thank you for letting me present before you today. I support this legislation and what Representative Kidd is trying to do. We have cities that are very excited about the opportunities of having tasting rooms in their cities. I just want to make sure that a city has the opportunity to pass an ordinance to approve a tasting room itself prior to one opening up within a city limits. The city may have approved the distillery itself, but was unaware that a tasting room was going to be part of it. I can't imagine any city would be opposed, but that should go through the local legislative process. I would simply propose that the local governing authority would be required to pass an ordinance permitting the tasting room.
Any question? Any question to the GMA?
Currently, I mean, educate me. I'm new to this committee. Was just here last year. Does the city have to issue a permit each year for a distillery? Do you have to come in for a license every year?
I believe that the city has to approve a distillery each year, but I think as part of the initial permitting process, a tasting room wasn't part of those 4 existing, or 3, however, whichever
No.
distilleries are in the state today.
I understand. I was just I'm trying to be sensitive to local control, but also not to overburden the process. So I'm just wondering, I guess this law would become effective July 1st. So the only time, if these permits go calendar year to calendar year, the only time you would have an opening would be the 6 months for the end of this year, would it not? Because the city could choose or not to renew the license. Like, basically, if you opened a tasting room, they didn't want you there, they could not approve your license, I suppose.
But if I would hate, if, for whatever reason, the city didn't want the tasting room but may want the distillery, that would, if there was a separate permit for a tasting room, then they could bifurcate that decision and have a distillery but not have the accompanying tasting room. It's just more local control.
You planning to require a permit and another fee for this, like you did Sunday sales?
Planning to require.
There are many cities that are charging places, more for a permit to sell for Sunday sales. It wouldn't be your intent that this would just give.
That's not my intent to charge permit fees.
I know you don't charge any permit fees. The cities that do it, but
It's not my intent to
Okay.
provide another
you just want to give them
avenue.
the control. Fair
I just
enough.
want the local control aspect.
Yeah.
I guess you might, yeah.
Would the city, if a winery has a tasting room, does the city give the winery, they license a tasting room in a winery?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think so. Well, I do it for this.
Maybe it would be worthwhile to consider doing it for the tasting rooms of a winery also.
I ain't living with that.
No, and that's not my intention. I just know that there are a couple out there that currently have permits for distilleries, permits out there for distilleries, but the tasting room is a new piece to this, and I want to give the city the option to provide to go through the permitting process for those.
Who we got? This one?
Did any of the cities that currently have distilleries ask GMA to request that?
I haven't put anything out on this. I can just imagine when it comes to alcohol issues, cities do like to be involved in the decision of whether to what goes on in those.
But at this point, none of them have asked for that.
I haven't had any cities come forward to me. But I'll send out an email to the cities where those distilleries are going to be located this evening to find out what their preference is.
That's- Any other questions? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments? We got one more. Karen Brewer. There you are. Wishes to testify. Tell us who you are and who you represent.
Good afternoon, Karen Bremer with the Georgia Restaurant Association, and we just wanted to, the restaurant industry just wanted to offer their support to this bill. We think it's good right now for commerce in Georgia, for products to be produced here in Georgia, served by Georgians and consumed by Georgians. And we think that this is a part of the growing trend of ecotourism and food tourism in the state. So we would like to offer our support for it.
Okay. Any questions? Submit. Thank you, Ms. Brewer.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We've heard all, no one else to speak, so we're back in the posture of, what is your number there, sir? We got you covered. All right. Recognize Representative Powell.
I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
All right. Let's hear your
Move
motion.
that this committee approve HB 514 as proposed without amendments.
Any further discussion on the motion? So it's your intention to leave the Revenue Department involved in?
Well, there needs to be that much oversight.
Okay,
but
all right,
it seemed to be, that would seem to be plenty.
okay. All right, we've heard it. We got a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the bill indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the
Motion
committee.
goes out with a due pass recommendation. Okay. Representative Powell, I guess you're next with your age-old bill of architects and engineers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 166. This is not known to this committee. This bill passed as a substitute last year from this very committee, and it got held up on the floor of the House last year. As y'all know, a lot of things were moving slow. I wouldn't dare to say what one of the previous authors said, because this is not a retread, because it hadn't slung a tread. It just didn't pass last year. We couldn't get through the process. Very simple bill. What it does, this has been brought to you on behalf of the professional engineers and the surveyors of the state. Under current law, you can get a license to be an engineer, professional engineer, or surveyor, but you don't have to have a college degree to do so. A lot of things I don't think you need to have a college degree for, but quite frankly, when you're building buildings as a professional engineer and such, I think you need to have those credentials. You need to have that full-blown education studying engineering. The same as a real estate broker. I understand the importance that the surveyors also have a full scale of knowledge dealing with surveying. Currently, and I think probably the thing that reached out to me the most was the current pass-fail ratio for the licensing of these professional licensing tests was at less than 50% of the applicants that take a licensing test that don't have a 4-year degree have less than 50% pass ratio. And the language in this bill reflects that, both in the engineering and training and the professional engineering test, as well as the surveyor in training and the surveyor test. We have set dates. The only one I would bring the attention to the committee, last year we had set these dates into effect as to what would be acceptable, and then after a certain period of time, this was so that folks who are going through the process today, or at this particular time, they would be expected to know the time frame of the criteria expected to stand for the test, and then after that next date would when the new criteria would go into effect. Now, as I've looked at these, the only date that might be possible that we should look at is on page 1, line 14, where we say applying for an engineering training, applying prior to July the 1st of 2012. That may not be a big issue, but my thoughts is that if in this bill, when this bill passes, that this bill will not go into effect, possibly until July the 1st. So, the committee may wish to back that up to January the 1st of that next year, or we can quite simply leave it in effect on July the 1st of 2012. Either way about it, I don't think that that's going to be a big issue, because in the engineering section that this deals with is that they really don't have a lot of folks that are even taking the test now that haven't got a 4-year degree. That's how rigid these requirements are. Be glad to stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Chairman Martin. No question.
Joe Powell, just because on the dates, currently you don't, if this bill does not pass, you don't have to have that 4-year degree to be an engineer.
If this
Correct.
bill doesn't pass, right now you do not
have
have
to
to
have
have a 4-year degree.
I'm just getting to your date. I don't think your dates are a problem, because it becomes effective July 1st. The fact of anything we tell them you do on or before, it's the same way it is now. So
I understand.
if it doesn't come, so I think your date's fine. The one slight question I have here, and it may not bother many people, it may not bother anybody else on the committee, is if someone is on a track, if someone is on a track taking some classes through whatever educational outlets are available and planning to take that test. We've really, you know, given them a few months to change gears. If in this job, you know, in this environment out there, if they were headed in that direction, is that addressed further in, or is that just if you were on that track and you can't apply?
On Section 2, we had changed these requirements requiring the 4-year degree for those who are applying to take the professional engineering test July the 1st of 2014.
I'm sorry, I read that earlier. It's 2012 as well now.
So, you know, if there was any need, you know, to extend it for that 1 year, since we're now in a delay mode of the year, possibly, but what we're understanding is that it's not really a question. They just, while it is what it is, they just like to put those criteria in there that folks that are going to be professional engineers and surveyors, that if they're going to be licensed, then they should have the full 4-year degree.
Representative Michael Harden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on here? To my neighbor, I love supporting Allen Powell legislation every chance I get, but I'm a little perplexed on this. You mentioned that there's currently some that do not have degrees that are taken, although a small amount, that are taking the exam and passing, but it's not that many. I'm from the school. I think, like with attorneys, I'm not an attorney, but if a man wanted to challenge the bar exam and he could succeed at it, I like knowing that he wouldn't have to go to school all those years. Help me connect the dots. I mean, you know, frankly, I think if someone can challenge the exam, you know, I've got a man that helps me with my critters at home that is not a veterinarian, but he's the first one I call. He doesn't have that degree. I need some help helping you. So.
Well, I certainly understand, since we are neighbors and know how a lot of us in the northeastern area of the state we think. And quite frankly, I've always been concerned about, over my legislative career, I've always been concerned about, you know, adding extra hoops and hurdles to jump through. Now, like yourself, I come from a generation before you that some of the best attorneys we ever had read for the law. They didn't have to go to law school. But then the longer I look at things and the transition in our society, to me there's a little bit of difference between somebody, if they could still read for the law and practice law, and design a high-rise building. One that is a lawyer who can read for the law, if that was still the way it was operated, the only thing he could do would be to talk you to death. But an engineer that's paid to design a building or something like this could literally kill you if it collapsed. So I think that when we get to talking about the safety of these things, and then even further into the surveyors, there's probably been more death and destruction besides religion based on property lines. So I would certainly think that these would be adequate reasons to say, here's a profession that we ought to have. These folks, if they're going to stand for a test, then let them be fully educated to stand for the test.
One follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. But you would acknowledge that there are those that are not educated at our universities that stand for this test, and the questions being random clearly have studied enough to be able to design that high rise.
Most of this, I understand that most of these folks that we're speaking of who take these tests, both engineering training and professional engineering and the surveying training and surveyors test, that most of these folks who don't have a, quote, certified college degree in these subjects are people who have been working in that or under the skilled trades of licensed folks for years, for numerous years. And, you know, and it's just these professional associations that brought this forward to say, since they're not having a lot of trouble with non-quote degree people taking the test, that they thought this was the time to go ahead and raise these standards.
Okay. Representative Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Powell, actually Representative Harden took one of the questions I was going to ask, but just one quick one along the same lines. Is there any proof, or are there any numbers of individuals who have not had a college education that are engineers that their engineering skills have proven to be insufficient, or there's been issues with the structures that they've been a part of?
I would think that if they were here, that the engineering board would probably be the proper folks who could tell you, because they deal with their licensees and any infractions. The only knowledge that I have is from the actual pass-fail ratio of taking the test. And generally, if you have less than 50% of the people who take a test, if they don't pass it, you got to scratch your head and wonder, well, maybe they weren't properly prepared to take the test. And if it wasn't prepared to take the test, did they have full knowledge of the subject matter?
Right, I understand. I just through the line of
Right.
questioning, that was just one that popped up, and because I, like Representative Harden, had just wonder if they can pass the test. Then,
Right.
I didn't go to school, I didn't go to college for real estate. I went for something else, but was able to pass the appraiser's exam, for instance. But anyway, thank you very much.
Anybody else on the committee have any questions, comments? Anyone from the audience like to speak on the bill? One? All right. Tell us who you are and who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tom Leslie, and I work for the Georgia Engineering Alliance. It's a group of about 7 or 8 different engineering associations. We supported this bill last year. We support this bill this year. Appreciate you all considering it. Elmo Richardson, from County Commissioner in Bibb County, is the chairman of the Licensing Board for Engineers and Surveyors. He is downstairs right now meeting with Brian Kemp on this new licensing strategy that you've read about. I had lunch with him before coming today, and he's sorry that he couldn't be here to speak on behalf of this. His word is that tell the members of the committee that when they go home tonight, they drive over a bridge that was designed by an engineer, and it is imperative that that bridge be well designed, and that this does, as Representative Powell said, really kind of address kind of the safety and life and health issues. He also said that with regard to the engineers, there are really very few folks that take the non-degree path to licensure. He said 4 or 5 each year. Many of those are those that are not native-born folks. They are here from other countries, and that they may have some training in other countries, and that it's unclear about kind of the graduate status of those folks. So it really is a fairly rare occurrence. He strongly supports, as does the association, the notion that there should be a college degree as a prerequisite, as there is in law and medicine and the other areas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. I'm Trent Turk. I represent the surveying side of this equation. I'm on the legislative committee for Surveying and Mapping Society of Georgia. We have about 600 members there in the state. Following along on his bridge theme, it's very important that bridge is in the right place as well. If it's too high or too low or too far left or right, you're going to have a problem. Really what this is about is protecting the public. And when you make that call to one of these professionals, you need to feel, as general public, that you're hiring a professional that is truly qualified to do whatever you're calling for. If you get that person that did the apprenticeship route only, and they took the test 4 times and they finally learned that test, and they were able to pass it, our position is that test alone is not the criteria of whether that person's a professional or not. It's much broader than that, and therein lies why both professions are bringing this and saying we need to have this as a requirement for the professions. It creates a broader foundation for each applicant before they ever get there to take that test. So I hope that clarifies a little bit of the questions that were being asked.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're in a position to accept a motion on this bill. Got a first, second?
Second.
Second motion. Okay. Chairman Martin, do you want to speak?
Under discussion, if I might, Mr. Chairman, just very brief.
All right. Make it brief.
Yes, sir. Representative Harden, I follow your concern with that. I guess the gentleman that first spoke from the Engineering Association made a point. One can read from the law, I choose my own lawyer. I still am probably one of the few in this legislature that would like to see us have less requirements in terms of if people want to read for the law and be a lawyer. But I choose my own lawyer. The gentleman makes a good point, is I don't choose who sets that bridge. Somebody does that for me and for all the people that we work with. So a slight distinction to that. Still, I respect your point if you have a different one on this, but that's where I would draw the distinction between having a degreed engineer and a degreed surveyor.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion about the bill? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Bill goes out with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Powell. Okay, I guess we need to bring the big barrels in. Listen to Chairman Smith. Are you available? Bring the big barrels in now. We're fixing to increase the gallonage. Tell us about House Bill 472.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 472 was presented to this committee last year, and it passed unanimous, and it got held up across the street, and it's ideal. It's the exact same bill that was passed last year, but as things transpire, there's always little changes that come up, and we have noticed a little change that may need to be addressed from the time I left the Capitol steps till I got over here. Now, I'm going to ask Legislative Council to explain that. But basically, all this does, it increase a brew pub's opportunity to go from 5 to 10,000 barrels, and then of the 10, they could sell up to 5,000 to a distributor for distribution. They cannot distribute themselves. So I'm going to let Sue Marie tell a little bit about that issue that we got.
Well, as I understand it, the change that you're wanting to the bill would address the increase. You're increasing the barrels to 10,000 that can be manufactured, and also in the bill it is changing the maximum number that can be sold to a wholesale dealer to 5,000. And in the definition of brew pub, there's existing language that requires that the brew pub be an eating establishment. And then the term eating establishment, as part of the definition of brew pub, is defined as an establishment which is licensed to sell distilled spirits, malt beverages, or wines, and which derives at least 50% of its total annual gross food and beverage sales from the sale of prepared meals or food. And so it's my understanding that the change that you want is to recognize that there is an increase in the barrel amount, and to subtract out the 5,000 that they can now sell to the wholesale dealers for distribution out of the 50% calculation. And so the change would be that we would actually change the title to reflect that we're not just changing the code section you see in the bill, but we're actually changing the title itself. We would add at the beginning of the bill a section 1 that actually goes into the definition section of Title 3 in Code Section 3-1-2 to the definition of brew pub. With your permission, we would make some technical changes because we're still referring to beer, which that's not actually a defined term in the code. So we would strike beer, and there's actually a misreference in that definition to an article, so we would change that to paragraph. But the actual substantive part would be to add at the end of that definition that I read you previously about the eating establishment, and add, provided, however, that barrels of malt beverages sold to licensed wholesale dealers for distribution to retailers and retail consumption dealers as authorized pursuant to subparagraph C of paragraph 2 of Code Section 3-5-36, which you can actually see in the bill before you, shall not be used when determining the total annual gross food and beverage sales.
That's exactly what I said.
The chair observes that this bill is not what we thought it was when it came. And I don't particularly like to make some wholesale changes to one short meeting that we've got. What I'm going to do is to have legislative council draft that bill with all those amendments in it, run it by revenue, bring it back in here, and we'll sail through.
We'll do it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Any further business to come before the committee? Hold on. What do you got there, Representative Kidd? Since we've not got that bill in before us, Representative Kidd, Revenue Department is right back there in the back. I suggest you get with them. If you can work that out, then we can take it up. I think they'll treat you fairly. No further business come before the committee. We stand adjourned.